Welcome to the Stronger Tides Podcast, the podcast for small business entrepreneurs and corporate executives to learn more about increasing their client or employee retention through a group cruise program. Ready to drop anchor? Here's your host, travel advisor Rita Perez.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited that you are here for another episode. And this week's theme is why I think 3 or 4 night cruises are the best for a corporate retreat. And personally, it gets me a little cringy just thinking about that because 3 or 4 night cruises are just too short. They're just too short. Can you tell I'm a little bit of a cruise snob? But on the right settings, such as a corporate retreat, 3 or 4 night cruises are really the best for your clientele, which in this case, those are going to be your employees. So here are some of my thoughts on why that is. And it could be that maybe you do a longer retreat, and that's totally possible at sea. 7 days are definitely a popular option. But I feel like for most, usually you're just taking a weekend to do a retreat and do lots of team building activities and general communication. So that's why I say 3 or 4 nights is probably best for a corporate retreat. So the first point that I want to make is time. So I don't have to preach to you how much time is money. And while it is important to take time and invest in your employees, you can't take too much time away from your clients. So thankfully, there's good onboard Wi-Fi that helps you stay connected regardless of the time frame of your cruise. But I know time is a big one, and especially for your employees who have families, they are not going to want to be away that long from their families. My second point is communication. So while Wi-Fi has definitely improved, it has gone leaps and bounds. I mean, I remember the days, so my first cruise, I believe, was either 1998 or 1999. And that was the Disney cruise. But I just remember those days of being on a cruise ship and you knew that your phone was not going to work. Like you weren't going to have service. And that's like, I don't even think I had a phone at that time. So maybe a couple years after. Yeah, I don't think I was old enough for a phone yet. But there were times in the past where you knew and you were aware that when you went on a cruise ship that you were not going to have access to your phone. That as soon as you started sailing, you turned your phone off and your phone didn't get turned back on until you came back. So those days are like the olden days of the cruise industry. Wi-Fi has definitely sped up and is very reliable, especially on some of the major players in the cruise scene. Hey, interested in getting an actual numbers comparison of a land retreat versus a cruise retreat? You know, honestly, when I was putting this document together, I couldn't even believe the great difference between the numbers. Visit StrongerTidesPodcast.com to be added to my weekly email list and get the download now. Back to the show. If you are trying to make like those basic calls and it's not on a Wi-Fi connection, that still has not caught up. That is still, like, if you want to make a call from your cruise ship cabin to somebody on land, that's still going to run you about $8 a minute. So that is also another reason why a shorter cruise might be better. Because you don't want to rack up those charges, for one. And 2, not everybody might be connected to one of the Wi-Fi calling apps, such as, you know, basic Skype and, what is the app? Now I'm going to forget what the name of the app, and I just used it to talk. WhatsApp. That is another really good Wi-Fi calling app. All right. Now, the third reason is This is probably one of the biggest obvious ones is cost. So a shorter cruise by virtue is going to be less expensive than a longer cruise. That is also to say that on a shorter cruise, you're not going to have as many sessions as a longer cruise, so that is also going to be able to save you money as well. The aspect that I'm saying where you might be able to save some money on a shorter cruise on top of just the basic cruise fare is those meeting space fees are going to be less the less amount of days that you are at sea. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about in regards to why a 3 or 4 night cruise is going to be the best, there's less distractions. It's widely known / seen that the cruise ships that they use for these shorter cruises are going to be very basic cruises. They're older cruise ships that don't have like all the bells and whistles as the newer cruise ships do. Now, I'm not saying that the cruise ships are dilapidated and they're going to be all grody and nasty. That is not what I'm saying at all, because the cruise ships are still beautiful in their own right. I'm just saying that they're not going to have, like, remember in the last podcast, I was talking about like race cars and ice skating rinks. That's not going to be on these smaller ships that do the 3 or 4 night sailings. So what are you thinking after this? Like, does this provoke any thoughts that maybe you hadn't thought about before in a group cruise program? I know every organization is going to be different depending on how you want to run your program, as far as events and meetings and education that you want to have on board. So that's why I feel typically for a corporate retreat, a 3 or 4 nighter is going to be way better than a 7 nighter. But let me know what your thoughts are. Send me an email and I'd like to interact. I have been your host, Rita Perez.
Thanks for joining us on the Stronger Tides podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast. And if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating or a share with your colleagues. Find us on social media at Rita Ventures Group Cruising and online at ritaventures.net. Until next time, happy sailing.